another title for the talk could be Global Emergency Medicine Development, where are we now and where are we going? What is the state of emergency medicine development in the world right now? And what can we learn from what's happening in 20 or 30 or 40 other countries? And what can we learn about the future, how we can do emergency medicine development? I don't have any financial disclosures to make, unfortunately, but this is my email. If anybody has Twitter, this is my Twitter, and I'd be happy to send you the lectures or talk to you or have a conversation with you if you're interested. I'll show this again later on. So, some really interesting things happened in the last 100 years or so that have never happened before in all of human history. From about 1900 to now, we've had 4 or 5 really major things happen. Things that have never happened before, and that have changed the way human beings live, and the way we get sick, and the way we need medical care. What we had in the last 100 years was just an exponential change in modern science. We went from discovering how to fly the first airplane to being on the moon in 65 years. It only took 65 years. So, and things are happening faster and faster and faster in science. In particular, in medical science, this is moving at an exponential pace as well. If you think about the Human Genome Project, we didn't even discover DNA until the 1950s. And we didn't do the first human genome sequencing of DNA until the late 1990s. The first time we sequenced the human genome, it took 12 years and about $7 billion. Now you can do a human genome sequencing in about 36 hours. It costs about $1,000. So pretty soon, it'll be even cheaper and faster than that. So things are happening very fast in medicine. They're happening very fast in medical technology and science. Some other things that have happened in the world that have never happened before. Right now in the world, there are more people who live in cities than who don't live in cities. That happened in 2006, and actually was announced in October 2006, right around the time we were at an ASEP conference in New Orleans. They said in the last couple of days in 2006, the world population tipped over to being mostly urban. So now we have more people who live in cities in the world than who don't live in cities. And that's never happened before in all of human history. This is Mexico City, where there are 28 million people who live there. And most of the people in the world right now live in cities. And in the next 25 years, we're going to go from 7 billion people to 12 billion people, and 5 billion of those new 6 billion will be born in megacities like this. So you have to ask yourself, how is the medical care in most major giant cities in the world? And what's it going to be like in the next 15 or 20 years? So urbanization is happening all around the world, medical science, and advancement of technology. We also have this phenomenon of the gradual aging of the world population. The fastest growing segment of the world population are now these people. These people are the older segment, 65, 75, or 85. And in most countries now, the fastest growing segment of the population are the older people. And we know that older people have different diseases than the younger people. They have different kinds of diseases. They have chronic diseases, some of which we don't know how to fix yet, like high blood pressure or cancer. We know how to prevent some of it, but we don't know how to fix all of it. So as this happens, more and more countries have more and more older people, and older people have different diseases than younger people. Except most of our medical system is still based on treating infectious disease and treating curable diseases. So with this gradual aging of the world's population, and we used to have the older people would make way, the older people would make way and hand the world over to the younger people. Now it seems the older people are holding on, not letting that go. So by the year 2050, 1 out of every 5 people in the world will be over 65. That's 20%. Right now in Vietnam, I think the average age is in the 30s. But in Western Europe, the average age is above 50. So pretty soon, this will be happening in Vietnam also. So if you look at WHO data, particularly WHO data on something called the global burden of disease. Global burden of disease data has shown something that's never happened before in all of human history. It's been estimated that human beings have been alive in our current form for about 150 or 200,000 years. So for 200,000 years, the number one cause of death was infectious disease and communicable diseases. And all of that changed about 90 years ago. What happened is this new wave of disease, this new wave of non-communicable diseases swept over the human population. And what we see is in almost every country, communicable diseases and infectious diseases are going down and down and down. And in almost every country, non-communicable diseases are going up and up and up. What are the non-communicable chronic diseases? Heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, trauma. These are non-communicable diseases that are different in nature, different in origin, different in structure, different in philosophy than communicable diseases. And they're different in treatment. So this is a new phenomenon, it's a new wave of disease, a new type of disease that's only 100 years old or so. So if you look at other WHO data, if you look from 2010, you see 6 out of 10 of the causes of death are non-communicable diseases. 6 out of 10. That's now. But if you go forward into the future, to let's say 2030, what we see is 8 out of 10 causes of death. In only 15 years, 8 out of 10 will be non-communicable diseases. And if you look just at road traffic collisions goes from number 8 cause of death in the world to number 3 cause of death in the world, just from car accidents, just in the next 15 years. That's not a long time from now. So we put all the numbers together and we add up all the statistics, what you see is about 2 out of 3 causes of death right now are non-communicable diseases. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, trauma. So with a new type of disease and a new type of treatment, we need a new type of medicine. We need a new type of doctor. We need a new type of medical system. I think that's what emergency medicine is. What you see around, when you look all around the world, is that the need for emergency medicine systems is needed in every country. It's not just rich countries. It's not just countries that need CAT scans or MRIs. It's rich countries, poorer countries, countries that have a thriving economy, countries that are at the lower or middle income. Everywhere you look. So, at some point in the world, there was no emergency medicine training specialty. That's not that long ago. Now, there are places in the world that have good emergency medicine training. So where is the world on this curve? In the US, it started back in the 1960s. In the UK, in the 1960s. So the US maybe is, I'm not sure, maybe here? We haven't even perfected our system yet. The U.S. is still growing. We still have a lot of problems in our system. It's a good system, but we still have problems. Some places in the world are here, some places are here, and it turns out you can look to other countries for assistance for how you can build these systems. I tell you all of this data, this information, what's the importance of all this? What I think is the world has responded to these changes. The world has responded to people getting older, people living in the cities, people having different diseases, people having different lifestyle. For all of human history, we lived kind of the same until the recent history. And now we have new diseases, we have new medicines, we need a new system. So back in the 1960s, there were only 1 or 2 countries that had good emergency medicine training. The US, the UK, Canada, a couple other places. But over time, 2 or 3 or 4 countries at a time, we now have about 55 countries in the world that have emergency medicine as a specialty. And that number goes up by 2 or 3 countries every year. So at some point, there was no emergency medicine anywhere, only 50 years ago. And I think 30 years from now, emergency will be in every country. The same way pediatrics is in every country. The same way surgery is in every country. So we're in this really interesting period now, where 30 years ago or 50 years ago, the world didn't know how to build emergency medicine systems on a national scale. Now we know a lot of the answers about how to do that. We don't know all the answers, but we know a lot more than we did 30 years from now. And 30 years from now, it'll be done, I hope, unless something horrible happens. So, it's an interesting time to be involved in emergency medicine. So if you look around the world, there are about 5, 6, 7 countries where emergency medicine is very well developed. So the USA, Canada, the UK, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, a couple other countries. And this is where emergency has been there for 30 years, 40 years. They have specialty, they have societies, multiple societies, research, governmental recognition, insurance looks at you, the national registry, et cetera, et cetera. There are about 30 or 40 things that you can check off to see, are you a mature specialty? So about 10 countries. Then there's this middle group of about 30 or 40 countries where emergency has started, but it's not done yet. And I think Vietnam is in this group. Vietnam emergency medicine started in 2011.